So which of the following is a good description of the term acceptance? Any indication that the offeree is prepared to negotiate, a final and unqualified assent to the terms of the offer, what the purchaser does to confirm willingness to purchase will depend on the facts of each case. I can see somebody's trying to chat with me here. I don't know what they're saying. So, most people very comfortable here. Okay, so a final unqualified assent to the terms of the offer. Any concerns, questions? So, will depend on the facts of each case is really a stupid answer, but as you work through your law degree, you'll find that it both annoys teachers and your clients. So if you've got something that you can accept, go with that. And what the purchaser does to confirm willingness to purchase is correct. That will be an accept in the sense that if the offer is an offer to sell something, the things that the purchaser does to confirm willingness to purchase, like saying yes, handing over cash, etc., those things will manifest their intention to accept, but as a definition, it's limited. It's only talking about a sale and purchase, for example. You see, you're learning to hide yourselves. That's very clever of you. And Nahida, I can see your question now. I'll come back to that. Come on. Okay, so who can accept an offer? You ready? Generally, only a person to whom the offer has been made, any person who's aware of it, the highest bidder, or anyone with capacity to contract. Again, pick the best answer. Five, four, three, two, one. So again, best answer here is generally only a person to whom the offer has been made. Anyone can accept an offer. A contract will still be made if the person who accepts doesn't have capacity. But as we'll learn as we go down through this journey, it might be that you can't enforce that contract that has been made with a person who doesn't have capacity. But that's a whole mind trap for another day. Here, the best of those definitions was the person to whom the offer has been made. Now, and offers could be made to a class of people or to the world at large. A little bit of a movement there, but whoever L is doing well. Can an act done in ignorance of a unilateral offer be an acceptance of that offer? Easy peasy, yes or no? Got a 50-50 chance of getting it right. I must find my little... Oh, yes. Got 18 of you in there, 5 seconds to go. So again, 75% of you are in the right space here. So we'll talk about Crown and Clark, which I think will answer that question for those of you who fit otherwise. I haven't got music, but I'll bring some applause. Oh, Steph. Somebody was fast, a lot of speed there, I can tell. When a person who is, sorry, when, that should be is, a person who is not, no it isn't, must be can. Please pay more attention to proofreading your work than I clearly do. When can a person who is not the offeree accept the offer? We're all happy with what the question is now? When the offeror intends that a third party might accept, when the offeree has died, their estate can accept, if the offer states that it can be accepted by a nominee, or when the accepting party acts as agent for the offeree. At least one of those is going to be correct. Oh, you only get to choose one. 4, 3, 2, 1. Speed would have made all the difference. So all of those are examples of circumstances when a person who is not necessarily an offeree can still accept an offer. Questions, concerns, frustrations, mean question? Let's get going then. A little bit of movement at the front there. If more than one person accepts, but the contract can only be performed once, the last one to accept misses out. The offeree is likely to be in breach of at least one contract. The offeror is likely to be in breach of at least one contract, or the parties will need to go to mediation. Sorry, I actually identify as a 3-year-old. I usually say it's a 14-year-old boy, but like clearly I'm much more easily amused. So again, majority of you guys are good. Majority are in the right place here. It is a little bit difficult to work out, but again, these are the kind of circumstances that you need to think about with a lot of the kinds of problems that you end up with as assessment problems here. It's quite usual for there to be the potential for the person you are advising to need to deliver under 2 contracts. So that's why you're working out which contract is the real contract. And the problem is if both of them are real contracts, then actually what's going to happen is that they're going to have to breach. And by the way, breaching a contract is not a crime. It's not a great thing to do. Ethically, we don't really encourage our clients to do it. But as we'll talk about with some of these cases that we get through even in acceptance, part of what commercial people need to do is work out, well, what's the best risk mitigation? So, yeah, it is this week. One of the cases that you looked at was the Roffey Brothers case, yeah? So part of the whole Roffey Brothers circumstance, and Musamechi is the other one that fits in this. So that might not be this week, actually. It might be next week. Neither of those cases sound familiar to you? Oh, well, I won't give too much away then. But maybe, actually, when you are reading them, because it'll be next week then, think about that what are the parties trying to do here? You know, why are they trying to vary the contracts in the way that they are? A little bit of movement. Adding a term while accepting the offer is a really good way to ensure that the terms are clear and certain, creates a counter-offer which varies the contract terms, or results in a counter-offer extinguishing the original offer. At least one of these is true. Oh, people are getting in very fast here. 10 seconds to go. Got a feeling we've got most of you who are going to play in now. Absolutely. So it's very, very usual for parties to want to get more detail and we'll talk about how that works when we get to Masters and Cameron and similar cases to those. But when the contract is made and whether or not you have additional terms, it's a kind of different issue from this. So this is a very subtle difference. A counter offer doesn't vary the contract terms, it rejects the original offer. If that counter offer is accepted, a contract will be formed where the counter offer is the offer and the acceptance of that counter offer is the acceptance, and that's how agreement is reached. A little bit of applause for you. Court needs to find both an offer and acceptance in order to determine agreement. Yes, without both no agreement can be found. Yes, these basic principles are fundamental to the common law. No, it will look to identify consensus and intention if offer and acceptance aren't clear, or no, offer and acceptance are not relevant if the agreement is signed. At least one of those things is true. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, this is where we'll spend a bit of time today. The easy way to find agreement is to match an offer capable of acceptance on its terms that hasn't been withdrawn with an acceptance that doesn't seek to vary those terms, that is communicated before withdrawal. That's the easy way to do it. But the law recognises that sometimes you can't actually easily find that space. And when you think about McRobinson's, which he started today talking about, the court didn't say there's no contract at all. The court said the ticket, the issuing of the ticket was not the formation of the contract. But the court wasn't terribly helpful to telling us with where and when that contract was formed. They just got away with, because of the reason that action was brought, saying it wasn't formed in Western Australia by the issue of the ticket. So, Mr. Stamp Duty man, you can't collect tax at this point. You just have to wait. Okay, so we'll look at some of the cases. So Brambles and Butler Tools and Excello are the cases that fit in that space. A little bit more applause for you. A written contract is only final when solicitors have reviewed it. This is a big statement. Masters and Cameron would be authority for that. That's either a true story or it's fake news. I'm also clearly enamoured with Bitmojis. You do realise this class is largely just to amuse myself. This is what you are for. It's all about me. Fake news. Absolutely. So Masters and Cameron is an important case, and we will come back to it in a few different iterations. And Masters and Cameron is the case that sets up the different categories for working out whether a contract is made when parties intend that it gets written down by solicitors at some point. But again, it's something that we will come to later on. And, oh, we've got one more. In order to determine whether parties have reached finality in their agreement, a court will look to whether there's a signed document or not. Only look at a signed document, sorry. Consider the actions of the parties both before and after the purported agreement is made. Look carefully at the words the parties used in any written agreement. Only take into account what happened before the alleged agreement was made. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Somebody got in there right at the last second. Yeah, so this is exactly the case. They consider, whoops, this way around, consider the actions of the parties before and after. Oh, I wonder why that's not coming through on my recording. So a couple of people have put in, only take into account what happened before the alleged agreement was made. it is likely from an evidence point of view that the court will be more interested in identifying from an objective test point of view what the parties may or may not have said or thought. They're more interested in what happened before the agreement was made, as a general rule. But when parties continue to act as if a contract is in place, particularly over a period of time, they will take that into account as well, because if suddenly parties are saying, no, there was no contract, that can be difficult. So the key case that we look at here, it was both Brambles but the Excello Corporation, or the Butler Tools case, which is called the Battle of the Forms case. And you'll remember that in that case, it's a UK case, but effectively what was happening is there's documents that don't match up. So over an extended period of time, somebody's buying something and somebody's selling it. They're buying with their purchase order that says, these are the terms, this is the warranties you have to give us, this is when we'll pay our bills. And they're selling based on delivery dockets that say, have something to say about all of those same things, but they don't exactly match each other. And so the question is, well, whose form wins? And the judges say, well, actually, you don't need a piece of paper to have a contract. We're going to look at all of your dealings. And actually, it turns out you mostly paid this way. So, or you mostly accepted delivery in this way, and it might not even be exactly what's written on the forms anyway. Oh, Tiffany, you got a strong lead there. Oh, agreement to agree. Sound like a great negotiating tactic, are an essential step in the process of creating an enforceable agreement, sometimes make it hard to identify consideration, are generally not enforceable. Again, one or more of these things will be a true statement. Okay. Oops, went the wrong way. Come on. What happened there? Oops, sorry. Here we go. Generally not enforceable. Okay. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to certainty in particular, but when you think about it, it's kind of tautologist. We're going to agree that at some future time we'll reach agreement. We don't have, that's not an offer. If I say to you, let's agree in the future, let's agree something in the future, let's agree in 2 weeks' time, and we get to 2 weeks' time, I can't sue you if you don't agree with me, because we don't have sufficient certainty or clarity around what that offer even was. And particularly if I'm, well, I don't need to particularly anything. We don't have sufficient certainty to create an agreement. Silence is golden, however, alone not adequate to be acceptance. Silence is golden and can represent acceptance if offer stipulates that it's an appropriate method. One of those things is true. Whoa, people are getting very, very quick now. 5 seconds to go. Interesting. Okay, so this is going to be a key point. We'll spend a little bit more time on this because it's kind of 50-50 here. But basically, silence by itself can never be acceptance. So the case that is relevant here, Feldhaus and Bentley or something like that. It's the case where there's a horse and the horse is being auctioned and the uncle writes to the nephew and says, I want that horse, I'll give you however many shillings for it. The nephew even goes to the auctioneer and says, I'll put that aside I'm going to sell it to my uncle. But the auctioneer gets it wrong, gets it wrong and sells the horse to someone else. So the uncle sues. So firstly, there'd been, basically the action is being brought against the auctioneer. There's an issue in tort here, but the contractual issue was there a contract in place to sell the horse? Because effectively what the nephew is trying to demonstrate is, I didn't own the horse, so you, Mr. Auctioneer, are in breach of your contract with me because you sold stuff that I didn't own and you were only allowed to sell the stuff that I did own. And the court said, well, actually, the fact that you had this subjective intention to sell it to your uncle is not enough. You needed to communicate your intention, your acceptance of his offer, to him. Communicating your acceptance to the auctioneer is not enough. So an offer was made by the uncle. It was subjectively accepted, but the acceptance wasn't communicated. That doesn't mean that you need to actually say the words or write them down. It might be handing over the money, shaking somebody's hand, winking, sending a thumbs up emoji. There could be any way, there needs to be some kind of communication though. Just blanket silence alone is not going to do it. Now there are many more questions in this quiz than I remembered, so, oh goodness. Courts determine whether conduct is or isn't acceptance using an objective test, a subjective test, polling software in a courtroom, or scales. We must be near the end now because like my jokes are getting like even more random. Make that go away. 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, an objective test. So, can somebody remember the name of the case? Feldhouse and Bindley. Bindley is.
I've got a New Zealand accent.
Bindley with an I. We're relying on the Kiwis to give us the cases. No. Feldhouse and Bindley. I'm terrible with case names. I have actually advised you of that, I hope, already. So, and here we go. Well done, Tiffany. Okay, so that will help me structure what it is that I talked to you about, but I think now we're going to just take 5 minutes. Is that enough for you to walk around, go to the bathroom, sanitise your hands, call your mother, do whatever it is that you need to do, and we'll come back at 10 to. Same for you at home, stretch your legs, hey?